Ginsburg with the Bradley Marc Ginsburg Scholarship.
Bradley Scholarship Award this year is $5,000. This is the 8th year we are awarding the Bradley Marc Ginsburg Foundation College Scholarship in honor of our beloved son Bradley. Bradley Scholarship is awarded each year to a West Boca Raton High School senior who exemplifies Bradley's exceptional values of honor, goodness, humility, intelligence, academic excellence, hard work, determination, and altruism towards others. 6 years ago, we presented the Bradley Marc Ginsburg Scholarship Foundation Outstanding Student and Humanitarian Award plaque to the West Boca Raton High School student in a beautiful ceremony. The plaque hangs in the main office of the high school. Each year, the student awarded Bradley's college scholarship has their name inscribed on the plaque. Bradley was one of the strongest students at West Boca High School, graduating 4th in his class, achieving straight A's in all his courses. He scored 5 on the final exam of each of the 10 AP courses that he took and was awarded the National AP Scholar with distinction. Bradley also achieved the Boy State Award. At Cornell, Bradley achieved straight A's during the first semester, but Bradley would not want us to tell you any of this, for these things were not important to Bradley. Bradley was extremely humble, modest, and non-materialistic, who would not talk about any of his achievements or display any of his awards. Bradley had only positive things to say about others and was the most moral and ethical person we have ever known. Bradley is the best person I have ever known. Bradley is our role model. Whenever we are faced with difficult situations, we always ask, what would Bradley do? Every applicant writes an essay as to how they meet Bradley's values, ideals, and goodness. They are asked to read Bradley's plaque, which states the values Bradley exemplifies. One of our student applicants in her essay wrote the following about Bradley. Bradley was the type of person everyone looked up to, extremely successful both in school and out, yet in a way that never made others feel below him. A strong leader, but a kind person. He was one of those few kind-hearted people that most people meet only a couple of times in their lives. There can never be another person like Bradley. Bradley was one of those people who always did really well in school, but most people didn't even know that. He was very humble and never bragged about his grades or his successes. Bradley was always helping out others. The students, as they continued, it's doing well in classes, not just because you want the grade, but because you have a passion for the subject and for learning in general. It's knowing how to manage your time. This was something that Bradley always managed to do. Even though he kept up a rigorous academic curriculum, Bradley knew how to have fun. Her essay concluded, Bradley had a way of lighting up every room he walked into. He was always smiling, and that smile was contagious to others. He always made everyone laugh, and all his teachers say he was one of those special students they get in a lifetime. There will never be someone else in the world like Bradley.
Many of the student applicants spent time researching what they could about Bradley's scholarship. Some knew about and watched on YouTube a speech I was invited to give at Emory University Law School a few years ago about Bradley and a landmark historical lawsuit against Cornell in the city of Ithaca. I've also written what I call a pre-book about Bradley and all aspects of her case, entitled Swimming Against a Tsunami and Crossing the Rubicon. I am starting to meet with publishers, magazine writers, newspaper reporters, filmmakers, etc. I'd be happy to speak with anyone who wants to discuss her case after awards night and email a copy of my writing to anyone who requests it. A landmark case is now considered the most important mental health case in U.S. history, as well as one of the greatest upsets ever. I went into the case using only Bradley's values of wanting to help others, the end result of which shows that if one lives their lives the way Bradley did, they will succeed against the greatest of odds. 6 years ago, I decided to sue Cornell because of what happened to Bradley at the gorge at the Thurston Avenue Bridge, one of 7 gorge bridges on the Cornell campus. Between 1990 and 2010, 28 young people passed away in the gorges at Cornell, and many more before that. In spite of this, no one did anything but talk. Cornell and the city of Ithaca continued to refuse to put means restrictions on the bridges, i.e. fencing at the railings of the bridges or netting below the gorge bridges, because they were worried about ruining the viewpoints from the bridges. I was determined that this could no longer go on. During the lawsuit, I incorporated Bradley's values of only wanting to help others and save lives with no monetary or personal gain for myself. Any sums awarded to us would go to Bradley's Scholarship Foundation. Cornell, which claimed to have one of the best university mental health facilities in the country, knew or had to have known the following. Over 50% of all college students will suffer from severe depression. Major studies show that at any point in time, between 15 to 18% of all college students are seriously thinking of taking their lives. Approximately 5 to 7% of these students will attempt to take their lives. Until the age of approximately 23, the frontal lobe of the brain is not fully developed. The frontal lobe is what exercises rationality to overcome emotion. At Cornell, 50% of student suicide deaths were by jumping versus 2% nationwide. Much of suicide is impulsive. If one attempting suicide is stopped, studies show that 90% of most of those people will never attempt suicide again. And to bring it home, the state of Florida is 49th out of 50 states in per capita spending on mental health. It is a misconception that suicide is always planned. Many people give no indication that they are depressed and or contemplating suicide. Just the other day in the Sun Sentinel, I read a statement of psychologists talking about the supposed harmful effect on students of a Netflix series involving suicide entitled 13 Reasons Why. The statement was, and I quote, "We do not recommend that vulnerable youth, especially those who have any degree of suicidal ideas, watch the series. Its powerful storytelling may lead impressionable viewers to romanticize the choices made by the character and or develop revenge fantasies." This is a statement that shows that they don't have the courage to confront the real problems with student suicide. Instead, they shift the focus merely onto a television series and talk in sophisticated generalities about vulnerable students instead of focusing and forcing on the issues as to really what needs to be done to prevent student and other suicides. Because in spite of what is a major health epidemic, mental health issues are still in the closet, just like cancer was in the 1980s. By being in the closet, large numbers of people are not seeking help, and many of those commit suicide. Our schools and universities and other entities should be talking much more about mental health issues with students and parents and set up first-class mental health programs. We need to let students and all people know that they can and should seek help for mental health issues just like any other illness. By doing this, many suicides would be prevented, but instead they put their head in the sand and do nothing or blame television or books. Those who care act and those who don't shift the blame, wring their hands, and merely talk. After Cornell refused several of my requests to meet with them, it was then that I decided to sue Cornell. I needed to act and just not talk like the others. I needed to cross the Rubicon, no matter how difficult and impossible. There was no turning back. I spoke to so many law firms and lost count. No one would take the case because they said we had no legal precedents on our side and monetary damages in our case were highly speculative and difficult to prove. I was advised by the attorneys I spoke with that the facts of her case were totally against us. Cornell did not own the Thurston Avenue Bridge, which is where the situation with Bradley occurred. And therefore, how could they have any liability with regard to a bridge they did not own? The city of Ithaca owned the bridge, and everyone knew that the municipalities were basically immune from being sued for such things. Additionally, when it was reconstructed several years before, the bridge met all New York State, federal, and municipal guidelines and won numerous awards. Furthermore, nobody knew that Bradley was suffering from severe depression. The legal duties of universities to prevent suicide were almost non-existent. The only very rare exception and only possibility at the time of our case to hold the university liable was to show that the university had notice of the student's mental health issues. For example, was the student being treated by the university's mental health staff, and could one prove the treatment was negligent? There were no federal court cases on this subject, and all state cases, except 2 to 3 states, rejected this theory. Additionally, this theory was not accepted by the federal court in New York State, where our case was being tried and did not apply to the facts of our case. To make our case even more impossible, all case law with regard to suicide clearly stated that suicide was an intervening, superseding act that cuts off all liability on the part of Cornell and the city. This made it virtually impossible for anyone to be responsible for and be held liable for the suicide of someone else. Every law firm that I spoke to told me that our case had 0 chance of succeeding. Being persistent and persevering, I continued Googling wrongful death attorneys and finally found a sole practitioner who took the case on a contingency basis. We filed suit in the Federal District Court, the Northern District of New York State. Both Bradley and I were the plaintiffs. The name of the case was Ginsburg versus the City of Ithaca and Cornell University. It turned out that the attorney I hired had never been involved in a lawsuit in the Federal District Courts. I became the lead co-counsel on the case. While an attorney, I had not practiced law for 30 years and had never done any litigation. Cornell had very experienced counsel and had never lost a case. Both Cornell and the City of Ithaca had access to the best law firms in the country with several hundred lawyers. Because of the above, I knew that I needed to force a settlement. And one way of doing that was to get our lawsuit as much press as possible, while getting Cornell, its administrators, and its Board of Trustees as much negative press as possible. This hopefully would cause the Cornell Board of Trustees to push forth a settlement. Therefore, to bring things home, I brought the president of Cornell into our lawsuit by suing him personally, along with several other Cornell administrators. Additionally, I sued for about $11 million, which became $150 million due to all the causes of action. The above got us plenty of press and negative publicity for Cornell. It was a true David versus Goliath, but in this case, David did not have a slingshot. However, I approached this case with Bradley's values to save lives and do good for others. I spent 5 impossible years and 1,000+ hours on the case with Bradley always by my side. Cornell and the city made motions to have our case dismissed, but Bradley and I won each time. We set crucial legal precedents which will save lives. These precedents are being quoted by lawyers in many other cases to help their clients. Our case is now considered a landmark case and the most important mental health case in U.S. history, and has been written about many times in numerous law review articles, legal newspapers, magazines, legal treatises, and is taught about in seminars for educational institutions. My hero, Federal District Court Judge David Hurd, overturned all the prior precedents, accepting all of our theories and arguments. He ruled that the possibility that Bradley in particular would take his life was irrelevant. It was clearly, as owner and controller of the bridge, that the defendants had a duty to maintain it in a reasonably safe condition to prevent foreseeable suicides. The university did not even have to know the person who took their life. All that is required now is that the defendant's actions or inactions could foreseeably have caused the harm to anyone. With regard to suicide being an intervening, superseding act that cut off any liability for the defendants, Judge Hurd ruled against Cornell and the city, stating that when the intervening act is itself the foreseeable harm that shapes the duty imposed. The defendant who fails to guard against such conduct will not be relieved of liability when that act occurs. This shattered the prior precedent for the intervening superseding act theory. Our state case established the extensive control doctrine, whereby Cornell could be held liable, even if Cornell did not own the bridge, if it could be shown that Cornell exercised extensive control over it. We argued that the city of Ithaca were merely puppets for the puppeteer Cornell. With regard to the city of Ithaca's claim of immunity, Judge Hurd ruled that immunity did not apply to the city, since the city did no formal study with regard to means restriction to prevent suicides at the gorge bridges, in spite of the many opportunities to do so. Never before had this holding been made by a court to justify the ability to sue a governmental body and hold them liable for a dangerous condition that they are responsible for. In effect, our landmark David versus Goliath federal court case, now considered the most important mental health case in U.S. history and one of history's greatest upsets, has given people the ability to force mental health and other changes by using our precedents instead of simply going cup in hand and begging schools, universities, and other entities to do the right thing so that lives can be saved. To further show the great historical importance of our case, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco was built in 1937. Over 1,600 people jumped to their deaths off the bridge. In 2017, the state of California finally decided to spend $200 million to start putting netting under the bridge to prevent suicides. As history has shown, there must be a willingness to use force when talking and pleading falls on deaf ears. For example, at the University of Florida, if a student was suffering from depression, there was a 2 to 3 week wait to see a mental health therapist, which is totally unacceptable. If during that time period the student took their life, then under our foreseeability precedent, the University of Florida and others like them could and should be sued. Just about every university talks a big game about mental health, but spends the bare minimum to simply give the appearance about caring. But when it comes to finding hundreds of millions of dollars for athletic facilities and stadiums, somehow they always come up with the money. After our case started, Cornell spent $8 million in putting up netting under the gorge bridges, and there has not been no deaths by jumping at the gorge bridges since. Additionally, Cornell increased by $1 million in spending for mental health. Before the trial was to start, I served notice to Cornell that I was going to subpoena the most important of Cornell's trustees and would do our best to embarrass and humiliate them. This put intense pressure on Cornell to settle. Bradley and I settled the case just before trial. The settlement with Cornell consisted of a Cornell scholarship in Bradley's name, named the Brad Ginsburg 13 Memorial Scholarship, the value of which is given every year in perpetuity to an outstanding freshman student from South Florida who attends Cornell and who best exemplifies Bradley's values. This year's Cornell scholarship was about $60,000. Another Cornell award created in Bradley's honor is named the Brad Ginsburg 13 Award for Outstanding Student Services at Cornell. Large 16 by 20 plaques for the above were created in Bradley's honor, each with a photo of Bradley in beautiful writings. The plaques in Bradley's honor now hang in the best location possible, in the window next to the front entrance door to the North Star Dining Hall, where all freshmen eat. Anyone entering or leaving the dining hall sees the plaques. Cornell wanted to put the 2 plaques in this important location because they had seen for themselves how truly outstanding Bradley was. And they wanted every student to forever see and read the writings on the plaque. This is the first time in history of Cornell that plaques, similar to the above ones honoring Bradley, have been allowed to be hung anywhere at Cornell. Even though Cornell and I had a bare-knuckles fight, after the settlement was reached, Cornell and I now have exceptional relations, and they have kept their word as to everything that was promised, as have I. This year, we had many fantastic students who applied for Bradley Scholarship. We interviewed all the students and got to know each of these truly outstanding students. They were all phenomenal. However, we can only give one scholarship. This year's scholarship is given to a truly remarkable and outstanding person. Michelle Liu, please come up and receive that.
Welcome Sandy Ehrlich with the National Council of Jewish Women.